Right, and we are live. Welcome back, everyone, to the Hoplite channel. If this is your first time, welcome for the first time. You are here because you clicked on the video, Samurai Literature, Part 2 for Issai Chozanshi. If this is your first time, I'd recommend you go back and watch the first part for Issai Chozanshi. We're reading from the Demon Sermon on the martial arts. But for those of you coming back for part 2, following part 1, welcome. I told the viewer in the last video that we would cover more about the Tengu. And as you recall from part 1, I said the Demon Sermon on the Martial Arts was written by Issai Chozanshi, which is obviously the pseudonym, the pen name of the author. But he was writing his concept work on Bushido and using the device of dialogue between two characters in the book. And the dialogue is between a fictional samurai and, of course, a fictional demon, or a Tengu. And I said I was going to talk more about the Tengu in this part. This will be the final part for Issai Chozanshi because we've got a lot more samurai literature to cover. And I thought that we could do it justice with these two parts. But let's talk about the Tengu. What did the word mean? Well, in the Japanese, it literally translates to heavenly dog or heavenly sentinel. So in the name itself, it was seen as something like a guardian between heaven and earth, almost like a gatekeeping demon, if you would, a sentinel. But we see in the mythology of Japan, the Tengu was a type of yokai, which is a supernatural being, as in heavenly dog or heavenly sentinel. And as I said, they were depicted in the mythology as humanoid birds. So yeah, just, big birds, big bird. The Buddhists, however, regarded them, the Tengu, as disruptive or even harbingers of war. So it was believed that in the Buddhist mind that if you saw a Tengu, or if a Tengu showed itself, it was a supernatural being of mischief, of one that could potentially mean that war was coming to the land. It was a bad omen. This was the Buddhist concept of the Tengu, but over time the feelings toward the Tengu softened, and I don't think they were seen necessarily as evil. And not particularly good. They were somewhere in between. Some could be evil, some could be good. They were not like Oni, and I could probably cover Oni in a different video, but Tengu were sort of a either or supernatural being as far as it came to righteousness or wickedness. But they were regarded for several things, and number one being spirits of mountains and forests. And as I said in the first part, Tengu were seen as the spirits that inhabited inhospitable places for most humans to tread, high up on mountains or deep in forests, these scarier places that some people maybe fear to tread. This was the realm of the Tengu. But they were also known for being keepers of secrets in the martial arts. Why exactly is anyone's guess. But there's a story that I alluded to also in the first part of this series to Issai Chozanshi. In the Demon Sermon, the fictional samurai climbs Mount Kurama to hopefully see and seek out the advice of a Tengu as it applies to his Bushido, his martial arts. And he did so because he heard of a legend of a different samurai who had done this prior and who was gifted with this knowledge. And the name of that samurai, the legend that was handed down, his name was Minamoto no Yoshinutsu. And the story goes that Yoshinutsu's father was killed by the Tanai clan, I believe. I could be mispronouncing that. But Yoshinutsu's father was assassinated. And the clan spared him, but made him live as a monk on top of Mount Kurama. And instead, he chose to seek out the Tengu, and the Tengu, finding out Yoshinutsu's father was murdered in this manner, as he was assassinated, being a rival samurai in a clan, the Tengu took Yoshinutsu under their wing, the bird wing, and taught him the way of the sword. And this was for the purpose of avenging his father. So the fictional samurai, the demon sermon, climbed Mount Kurama, hearing about the legend of Yoshinutsu and the Tengu who taught him the sword, and was hoping he could benefit from the same knowledge that Yoshinutsu did. So that is the story of the demon sermon on the martial arts, and how Chozanshi tells this dialogue and shares secrets of Bushido as he understood Bushido, being a samurai in the mid-1700s, late 1600s. Also, I don't know why this slipped my mind last time, but if you have an iPhone or a smartphone nowadays, you have these little emojis: a smiley face, a frowny face, a crying face. But there's also a couple goblin faces, and there's a Japanese goblin emoji, and I'll put it on the board here. It's actually a Tengu. It's that red mask with the big long nose like a beak. That is a Tengu. So the Japanese programmer, whoever put the emojis together, slipped in a little Japanese mythology, and there's a Tengu emoji. So if you see that little red goblin, that's what it means. Anyway, let's read a little more from the Demon Sermon, as I was talking about just a second ago, and we'll discuss the passages and what Chozanshi was trying to say in each of them. And I will, as always, provide the read along so you can follow. Okay, let's jump to page 126. And the Tengu said, "In form there is age and youth, strength and weakness, and deterioration and health. There is also work. All of these are created by heaven, received by us, but are not of our own doing. When you have that sole resolve, neither heaven and earth nor the gods and demons can take it away from you. For this reason, entrust the creation of form to heaven and simply take care of your own resolve. Men of little character begrudge what heaven has made and labor over their own creations. But our intelligence does not reach heaven's doings. The man who is distressed by things that our intelligence does not reach, and so discomforts himself and the gods, is a fool." Okay, what's he saying there? Saying there's form in age and youth, and strength and weakness, and deterioration and health. And if the heavens gift you with this resolve to develop form, to develop your virtues as a samurai and as a bushi, studying Bushido, don't discomfort yourself over this resolve. Steel yourself in that resolve. Understand that you may not have the ability to figure out why it is you are on this path or why you are motivated to take it, but it's like the old adage says, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. If heaven and the gods has decided to gift you with these martial arts or any other gift of labor, accept this gift and use it to the best of your ability, because as you do, the purpose of that gift may become clearer to you the more often you practice it. Okay, that one's simple. Second reading, 127. The Tengu said, "You should not use a tree that has only 2 leaves as a pillar. Usually you prop up a brace and support such a tree so that it will not grow crooked. And usually, from the time a person is young, you should not let him go along with a will toward the perverse. Fundamentally, man's mind is not without good. It is simply that from the moment he has life, he is always being brought up with perversity. Thus, having no idea that he has gotten used to being soaked in it, he harms his self-nature and falls into evil. Human desire is the root of this perversity." Okay, so what is he saying here? The Tengu is speaking to the samurai and saying that since you are born, you live a life soaked in perversity, and that we want the things that feel good in life because feeling good is desirable. We want that sweet food, and we eat it. And if we kept eating it without any moderation, we would get fat, or diabetic, or who knows what. We would like to sleep in all day. Well, if we did that all the time, we would lose all the day, and all the day's light would go away, and we would have less opportunity to get work done. We like to give ourselves over to lust. It was like, well, there's a lot of problems that go along with that too. So as he mentions a tree, you would not create a pillar out of a tree with 2 leaves. In that he means that a tree with 2 leaves is quite young. It's a sapling. It can't hold anything up. And because a tree is young, sometimes it must be propped up so that it can grow up straight. And this is the Tengu's lesson to the samurai, in that since you are soaked in this perversity, you as a tree, as a sapling, are a poor pillar. And you may grow crooked unless someone is to come along and prop you up to help you grow straight. And I think his lesson to the samurai was that young men and young samurai need to be raised as a tree that has the potential to grow up great and strong, but if left to their own devices, because of the perversity that we're born into, can often grow crooked and can stifle their own lives if they do not have that prop to make sure that they are growing straight and true. Okay. Interesting lesson for a demon to tell a man. Okay, we go to 128 now. And the Tengu said here, men of little character develop their minds in simply benefiting themselves. Thus, if they do benefit themselves and some perversity is the outcome, they are not aware of that perversity. And if they do not benefit themselves, but there is some propriety as the outcome, they are unaware of that propriety as well. They do not know how to distinguish between perversity and propriety of themselves. Swordsmanship is just like this. If from the time the student is a beginner, without having learned any techniques well, you say something like, technique will come naturally without intention. Establish the hard by means of the soft. Or, techniques are only trivialities. He will become empty-headed and lazy, and will have known nothing of where to stand. Thus, he will be at a loss both in this world and the next. Okay, so what is the Tengu saying in this passage here, which is actually 2 paragraphs spliced together? Saying men of poor character will seek out perversity, and if they're able to achieve the ends of their perverse mind, as in they get what they want, they don't know that this came as a consequence of perversity. If they choose to act perverse in another regard, but let's say some propriety happens in that action, and the propriety produces something of value, they aren't able to understand that propriety was what produced that either. They have no mind of knowing what is proper or perverse if they simply have a mind of perversity. And the swordsman is no different. And people who think that just because you practice with a sword, that technique will come the more you practice. It is only through proper practice that you become a good swordsman. Proper planning and preparation prevents piss poor performance. There's a saying that goes that way. But it's proper planning. It's proper preparation. Proper practice as a swordsman is necessary to learn correct technique, which will later be of benefit to you in this world or the next, as he says. It's the same thing as saying someone wants to be a guitarist. They want to be famous for playing the guitar. Well, they have to learn proper technique. They cannot just sit in their room and strum and fiddle about and hope that they can put notes together and pluck the strings accurately just by luck or just by enough trial and error. This is not proper technique. The technique must be learned, and it must be learned properly, and it must be practiced properly. Only through this can you say a bushi, a samurai, is using the virtues in his way to develop his techniques and his mind as a samurai. Because there is no time to waste when it comes to technique. You must do something and you must do it correctly. If you learn it correctly, you are that much further ahead than those who simply stumble through life, pick up an art or a craft or Bushido and hope to just do it right because they think it's right. Technique is everything. Everything flows from technique. And if you combine your mind, your body, and your spirit, your mind will use technique as second nature. And if your technique is correct because you learned to do it correctly from the first step, this is the correct method. Using technique as a means of achieving an ends is proper, provided the technique itself is proper and not perverse. Okay, last reading. We jump to page 170. And the Tengu said, "When you know yourself, you will be clear within and keep yourself well in check. Thus, there will be no reason for anyone to come and be your opponent. Even if your knowledge is insufficient and you make mistakes, it will not be your fault. Just entrust things to heaven. The person who does not know himself does not know others. Those who would deceive and defeat others by means of their own selfish minds will have the vacuity of their minds struck by others. Those who would attack others by means of their own desire will have that desire agitated, and its vacuity struck as well. Those who would overwhelm others by means of force will have the weak point of that force struck too. Learning and swordsmanship are the same. The person without desire, who simply exerts everything he has, will have no empty space to be struck." Okay, so what is he saying in this passage here? Well, you have to know yourself first before you can hope to know your enemy. And if you seek to undo your enemy with the desires, and as we were saying last passage, the perversions that afflict you, that sword that you carry, as in you are going to use someone's lust to defeat them because you have lust. You're going to use someone's greed to get the better of them because you also have greed and you know what that's like. That greed is a double-edged sword. If you wield it against another, so too can it be wielded against you. But the person who does not have these perversions of mind, who does not let their technique stray from propriety, who keeps their technique free from perversion, they cannot be struck down with this double-edged sword. They use the mind of no mind, and they approach every opponent, no matter who it is or who comes at them, as though they are a mirror reflecting that image of what is being brought to them. They do not let the perversions or the abiding places of their mind determine how they will attack or whom they will attack. This is in keeping with good swordsmanship as well, in that your freedom of thought without this occupation of desire or perversion is the dog you can let off the leash and have it returned to you, because you know yourself and you know that if this dog is let off the leash as you would let your mind off a leash, it can do what it needs to do and go where it needs to go, but it always comes back to you because you are the master of your own mind. You know yourself, therefore you can hope to know your opponent as well. Okay. All right. Very good. That is it for Issai Chozanshi and the Demon Sermon on the Martial Arts. It's a very good read, as I said. It's very short as well. I think 170 was where we ended this reading, and I want to say there's maybe a couple chapters after that. So it's easily 200 pages in that ballpark. It doesn't take very long to read, and against the life-giving sword and the unfettered mind, the Demon Sermon kind of completes the three sides of that triangle. Those are three very good books to read if you want to get a good grasp on Bushido and Zen Buddhism and Taoism with the balance, and how the samurai mind, when samurai literature was formed by these three sides of that triangle. Yeah, okay. So we'll move on from here, and I think I'm going to dive into some hardcore stuff. That's going to be the Hagakure. The Hagakure is going to be very different from this, in that it won't be as philosophical, it won't be as deep or Zen, so to speak. It's very much more militaristic, very much more in keeping with the Shinto tradition of the samurai. But the Hagakure is, again, one of those essential books in samurai literature, and we'll go over many of the passages. The good news is the passages are pretty much within one paragraph, and they pack a lot of food for thought in those paragraphs. And I'll pick several that we'll discuss in the next segment. But anyway, as always, I appreciate you coming by. I hope you enjoyed Issai Chozanshi, Part 2, and the Demon Sermon. And we will see you next time. Till then, take care.